Alright, here's a progression I like to use to teach the clean, eventually the power clean. I like to use a top-down approach and really focus initially on the hip hinge and getting athletes to hinge at the hip joint, load the posterior chain, the legs and the glutes, and get into really kind of reinforce that athletic stance position. So there's the hip hinge right there. So that's the priority on all these movements, is getting a good hip hinge, making sure that spine is relatively neutral, flat back. I like to see a vertical shin here as much as possible. Okay. So we're doing here, the first thing is a clean pull or a shrug pull. Trying to get as vertical as possible, getting triple extension at the ankle, knee, and the hip, and then not too much back extension. So a lot of times he's doing it here as well. Athletes will get, in order to try and either get through their hips or try and maximize that triple extension at the top, they'll actually hyperextend the low back or a little too much extension through the low back. So that's one thing you want to watch out for. Next exercise in this progression would be the hang high pull, or just the high pull from the hang. Again, we're looking for that hip hinge, trying to keep the shins relatively vertical and also keeping the arms out of it, letting the hips and the lower body do most of the work. Triple extension, high pull, elbows up high. So you can progress this from the mid-thigh, from above the knee or below the knee like he's doing here. Again, depending on what you're trying to accomplish and kind of how proficient your athletes are with the movement. Next exercise, you can either do this before you actually have your athletes get into a hang clean where they receive the bar, or you can do it after or concurrently, your call. But I actually like to do the front squat as we're working on the hang clean at the same time. But again, we're looking for that good flat back, making sure the hips hinge and they go posterior, and try and keep those shins relatively vertical. Now we move on to the hang clean. Again, you can go either mid-thigh, above the knee, below the knee. Either way, you want to make sure the hips are engaged. We got a nice hinge here, back's relatively flat, and we have a vertical shin. So we just combo the shrug pull with the high pull, and now we're into the receiving position, so he's actually going to catch the bar at the top. Then what I like to do here is combo up the hang clean with the front squat. So again, depending on how you like to coach it, you can either do this concurrently while teaching front squats, or after your athletes you're comfortable with where their front squat is at. Then you can go into a hang clean to a catch, then drop down into a front squat. So that's a nice little combo exercise. This is something you can do on complexes, things like that where you're working on maybe some work capacity. You're just trying to zero in this movement. Hang clean, front squat. And then finally, in this particular progression, we progress to the power clean from the floor. So we're just trying to put it all together here. A good clean push off the floor, triple extension, and then a good receiving position at the top. You can see here he kind of cuts this a little short at the hips. So if we slow it down to half speed, we can see he kind of cuts this short, doesn't get through the hips here, doesn't get that triple extension. And a lot of times you'll see this happen when you open it up and you let your athletes go from the floor and they just kind of fly through it. Some of the little things get left out. So this is why it's good sometimes to go back and really make sure those other previous movements are refined and be subconscious, so that it doesn't affect the full movement here from the floor. So anyway, that's how I like to progress it, top down. Good way to get your athletes good at this movement, and hopefully you can get this to transfer to their performance on the field or the court.